I was 38 years old when my mother introduced me as the babysitter at my brother's lake party. Not her daughter, not Dr. Corinne Voss, not the woman who had spent 12 years inside operating rooms, trauma bays, and ambulance doors, pulling people back from places most families never want to imagine. Just the babysitter. She said it with a soft little laugh, like it was cute, like the whole room was supposed to smile with her. And for 1 second, I almost answered. I almost told every church lady standing on that porch that I was a board-certified trauma surgeon at one of the busiest emergency departments in Western North Carolina. I almost told them I had opened a man's chest with my hands shaking from exhaustion, but not fear. I almost told them I had spent the night before saving a truck driver who had gone through a windshield on I-40. But before I could speak, my 6-year-old nephew Rory looked up at me and said, "Aunt Corey, will you watch me jump off the dock?" And just like that, my anger had to wait. My family had been shrinking me for years. My mother, Blythe Voss, never said she was ashamed of me. That would have been cleaner. She did something worse. She softened me until I disappeared. When I was in medical school, she told neighbors I was taking health classes. When I became a resident, she said I helped doctors. When I passed my trauma boards, she told her book club I was still working odd hospital hours. My father, Marvin, was not much better. He loved things you could touch: houses, decks, driveways. My brother Calder had taken over the family contracting business. And to Dad, that meant Calder built real things. Calder's framed licenses hung in Dad's office. His newspaper clipping from a $6 million subdivision sat on the mantel. My medical diploma spent 8 months behind a box of Christmas candles in the hallway closet. I found it there myself, still wrapped in plastic, while my mother stood in the kitchen and said, "Honey, I just never knew where to put it." I went to that lake party because of Rory, not because of Calder's new $900,000 lake house, not because of my mother's perfect potato salad, not because I wanted to stand under a white canopy while my father raised a beer and praised my brother for real work. I went because Rory had called me 3 nights earlier and told me he learned to float on his back. "You have to see it, Aunt Corey," he said. He was the only person in that family who said my name like I mattered. So I packed shorts, sunscreen, and the small emergency kit I kept in my car. Gauze, gloves, a pocket mask, shears, a pen light. People think doctors stop being doctors when they leave the hospital. They do not. We just become quiet people watching for the worst thing in the room before anyone else sees it. The insults started before lunch. My mother waved me over to 3 women from her church circle and said, "This is Corinne. She helps out at the hospital, but today she's our babysitter. She's wonderful with Rory." One woman smiled and asked if I worked the front desk. I looked straight at her and said, "No, I'm a trauma surgeon." Her smile froze. My mother laughed too fast and patted my arm like I was a difficult child. She's always so serious about titles. Later, my sister-in-law Tessa handed me a tray of lemonade cups and said, loud enough for 2 tables to hear, "You're honestly so good with kids. If the hospital job ever gets too stressful, you could run a little daycare." I told her, "Yesterday, I repaired a liver torn in half after a rollover crash. Stress is not the problem." She made a face and said, "Can we not talk about blood near food?" Everyone laughed. Calder heard it. My father heard it. Nobody corrected her. Then came Dad's toast. He stood on the grass, beer in hand, looking at Calder like he had hung the moon over that lake himself. "This house is what our family stands for," he said. "Hard work. Real work. Something you can point to and say, 'I built that.'" People clapped. Mom put both hands over her heart. Tessa wiped fake tears. I stood at the edge of the group with a plastic cup of water, feeling like a guest at someone else's family. When the clapping slowed, I said, "I build things too, Dad. I build time inside people who were supposed to be dead. He looked at me for 1 second. Then he looked away and started talking about the dock boards. That was the moment I stopped begging them to understand. Some people do not miss the truth. They step over it. I went inside to use the bathroom and found the first twist sitting on the kitchen counter. A folder marked Blythe Medical Papers. I should have walked past it. But my name was sticking out from the second page. And when you see your own name on a legal document you never signed, you look. It was my mother's emergency directive notarized 2 months earlier. Primary medical decision maker, Corinne Voss. Doctor to consult. Dr. Alan Beach. Family physician. Additional note in my mother's handwriting. Do not involve Corinne unless absolutely necessary. She has already given too much of her life to hospitals. I read that line 3 times. My own mother had a trauma surgeon for a daughter, and in the document that might decide whether she lived or died, she chose my brother and a small-town family doctor because facing my real work was too painful for her. It was not just disrespect. It was erasure dressed up as love. By 3 o'clock, the party had gotten loose. Adults were tired, warm, and distracted. My father had fallen asleep in a chair. Tessa was inside editing photos. Calder was showing 2 men where he planned to build a stone fire pit. My mother was on the porch, telling a church friend. Corinne answers phones at the hospital, I think. Or maybe she helps with patients. I can never keep track. Her voice carried over the water as clearly as a bell. I turned toward the porch, ready to finally break the whole pretty afternoon open. Then I saw Rory. He was 15 feet from the dock, past the shallow line, face down in the dark green water. No kicking, no screaming, just floating. I hit the lake before anyone else knew there was a problem. The cold undercurrent grabbed my legs, but I was already moving. I reached Rory, turned him face up, and saw blue around his lips. His chest was still. I dragged him to the dock, hauled him onto the boards, opened his airway, and gave 2 rescue breaths. His small chest rose. I gave 2 more, then compressions. 1 hand, controlled force, fast rhythm, no panic. Behind me, the world finally woke up. Tessa screamed. Calder shouted Rory's name. My father stumbled down the slope. My mother stood frozen on the porch with both hands over her mouth. I did not look at any of them. I counted. I breathed. I pressed life back into that child while every person who had called me the babysitter watched what a babysitter could do. On the 3rd cycle, Rory coughed. Lake water poured from his mouth. I rolled him onto his side and kept his airway clear while he gagged and cried. That cry was the most beautiful sound I had heard all year. Calder fell to his knees beside us, shaking so hard he could barely touch his son. "What do I do?" he kept saying. "What do I do?" I said, "Call 911. Tell them pediatric drowning, responsive after CPR. Possible aspiration. Keep him on his side." My voice was calm, not soft, not emotional, commanding. For the first time in my life, my whole family obeyed me without arguing. The paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. The lead medic checked Rory's oxygen, listened to his lungs, and turned to me. "Who started CPR?" I said. "I did." "Submersion under 2 minutes. Ventilation first." He responded after roughly 90 seconds. He looked at me more carefully. "Medical people can hear training in the way you speak." "Doctor?" he asked. I said, "Trauma surgeon, Asheville Memorial." He nodded once. "Then this boy got lucky twice. Once because you saw him. Once because you knew exactly what to do." My mother, still trying to save her version of the day, whispered, "Anyone would have tried." The medic did not even look at her when he answered. "Ma'am, most people freeze when a child drowns. What she did was not luck. It was skill." That sentence landed harder than any insult I could have thrown. At the hospital, my mother tried one last time to rewrite the story. We were in the waiting room, Rory in observation, Calder pacing like a broken machine, Tessa crying into a tissue. My mother sat beside a church friend and said, "Thank God Calder reacted so quickly." I turned my head slowly. Calder was looking at a fire pit plan when Rory stopped breathing. The room went still. I pulled him out. I breathed for him. I did the compressions. Do not steal that from me because the truth embarrasses you. My father stared at the floor. Calder stopped pacing. Tessa looked away. My mother's face went red, then pale. "This is not about credit," she said. "No," I answered. "It is about 10 years of you making sure I never had any." Then the double doors opened and Dr. Lenora Keene walked into the waiting room. She was the chief of emergency surgery, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could silence a trauma bay by lifting one finger. She saw me in damp lake clothes and stopped. "Dr. Voss?" she said. 2 words. That was all it took. My mother's head snapped up. My father blinked like someone had struck a match in a dark room. Dr. Keene came straight to me. "Why are you sitting out here? I heard about the pediatric drowning." "Wait, was that your field save?" I nodded. She turned to my family with no idea she had just stepped into a decade-long war. "You must be very proud of her. Corinne is one of the finest trauma surgeons in this region. I put her forward for deputy trauma director last month. Half my department would trust her with their life before they trusted themselves." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed right. My mother tried to speak, but no full sentence came out. Dr. Keene looked from her to me and said, "I assumed your family knew." I said quietly, "They know when it is convenient." That was the revenge. Not screaming, not throwing chairs. Just the right truth spoken in the right room by the one person my mother could not dismiss. A doctor in a white coat had called me what I was, and suddenly every small lie my mother had told looked ugly under fluorescent light. So here is the part I want you to hear. If your family has ever made you smaller because your strength made them uncomfortable, do not hand them the knife and help them cut you down. Leave a comment if you know that feeling. Some people only believe your worth when a stranger confirms it, but that does not mean the stranger made it true. You were true before they noticed. Rory was fine. Clear lungs, good oxygen. Overnight observation only. When I went into his room, he was sleepy and wrapped in a hospital blanket, but he smiled when he saw me. "Aunt Corey," he whispered. "The doctor said somebody saved me." I touched his forehead. She was right. His eyes were already closing. "It was you," he said, "because you're a real doctor." I looked up and saw my mother standing in the doorway, tears on her face, no church friends beside her, no story to perform. Just a woman finally seeing the daughter she had spent years avoiding. The next week, Calder hung my medical diploma and trauma board certificate in his office, right beside his contractor's license. My father left a voicemail that lasted almost 3 minutes, most of it silence, before he finally said, "I should have been there for your ceremonies, Corey. I was wrong." Tessa deleted her Lake Party post and wrote a new one. "My son is alive because of Dr. Corinne Voss." My mother did not apologize directly. That would have required more courage than she had built yet. But the following Sunday, in front of the same churchwomen, someone asked about her children, and she said, "My son runs a construction company, and my daughter is a trauma surgeon." No joke, no helper, no babysitter. I did not win because they finally saw me. I won because I stopped needing their permission to be what I already was. My mother called me the babysitter in front of her friends. Then she watched that babysitter pull her golden grandson back from death with bare hands and a calm voice. Some revenge is loud. Mine wore wet shorts, counted compressions on a dock, and walked into a waiting room where one word, doctor, destroyed 10 years of lies. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Now let's slow down and talk about this story, because this was not just a story about a doctor saving a child. This was really a story about being unseen by your own family, even when the whole world can clearly see your value. Corinne was not weak. She was not confused about who she was. She knew exactly what she had become. She was a trauma surgeon. She had worked for years, studied for years, and carried the kind of pressure most people cannot even imagine. But inside her own family, all of that became invisible. That is what makes this story hurt. Sometimes the deepest insult does not come from strangers. It comes from the people who should be the first ones clapping for you. Corinne's mother did not simply forget her job title. She kept reducing it. First, Corinne was helping at the hospital. Then she was working with doctors. Then she became the babysitter. That was not a small mistake. That was a pattern. And when a person keeps changing the truth until it becomes smaller and smaller, that is not confusion anymore. That is emotional erasure. One important thing in this story is that Corinne did not spend the whole time begging people to respect her. She corrected them. Yes. She spoke up. Yes. But she also understood something powerful. You cannot force blind people to see you if they are choosing to keep their eyes closed. Her family had proof everywhere. Her diploma existed. Her board certification existed. Her hospital career existed. Her brother even told his own son that she was a real doctor. So the truth was never missing. The problem was that the family did not want the truth to disturb the little world they had built around the golden sun. Calder, the brother, is also important in this discussion. He was not the loudest villain, but his silence did damage. He knew his sister was a surgeon. He knew their parents were minimizing her. But he let it happen because he benefited from being the favorite. That is a lesson many families need to hear. Silence is not always neutral. Sometimes silence protects the person getting praised and abandons the person being erased. Calder did not create the whole problem, but he helped it survive by staying comfortable. The lake scene is where the story changes from emotional pain to hard truth. All afternoon, the family treats Corinne like she is useful only for small things: carrying drinks, watching the child, standing at the edge of the photo. But when Rory stops breathing in the water, everything changes. Suddenly, the same woman they called the babysitter becomes the only person who knows what to do. Nobody else moves fast enough. Nobody else understands the danger clearly enough. Corinne does not panic because this is her world. Emergency is not new to her. Pressure does not break her. It activates her. And that is where the revenge becomes powerful. It is not revenge through shouting. It is not revenge through cruelty. It is revenge through undeniable action. She saves the golden grandson in front of everyone. The mother can no longer explain it away. The brother can no longer stay comfortable. The father can no longer pretend that only construction work is real work. In one terrible moment, the truth becomes visible. Corinne does not need a speech. Her hands do the speaking. But the story also shows how some people still try to rewrite reality, even after truth happens right in front of them. In the hospital waiting room, Corinne's mother still tries to shift the credit. She thanks the brother. She makes the emergency sound like a family rescue instead of what it really was. That moment is important because it proves that some people do not lie because they lack information. They lie because the truth threatens their image. Her mother was not just protecting herself from embarrassment. She was protecting the version of the family where the son matters most and the daughter stays small. Then Dr. Keene walks in, and this is the real public collapse. 2 words change the whole room. Dr. Voss. That moment is so satisfying because it comes from outside the family system. Her mother cannot control that voice. She cannot twist it. She cannot laugh it away as Corinne being dramatic. Dr. Keene speaks with authority, And suddenly, everyone hears what Corinne has been saying for years. That is why this scene works so well. It gives Corinne public validation, but more than that, it exposes the family's lie in a clean, calm, professional way. The life lesson here is not that you should wait for strangers to prove your worth. Corinne already had worth before Dr. Keene entered the room. She already had value before her mother finally said trauma surgeon at church. The real lesson is this: do not let your family's limited view become your identity. Some people may know you for years and still refuse to understand you. That does not mean you are unclear. It means they are committed to an old version of you because it makes them comfortable. Another lesson is about respect. Respect is not only about saying nice things. Respect means telling the truth about someone, especially when they are not in the room. If you love someone, you do not reduce their hard work to make yourself feel safer. You do not call their career a little job. You do not laugh at their title. You do not hide their success because it does not fit your family story. And finally, this story reminds us that real strength often stays quiet until the moment it is needed. Corinne did not need to prove herself at every table, every party, and every family gathering. When the emergency came, she was ready. Her training, her discipline, and her courage were already inside her. The lake did not make her a doctor. The hospital did not make her important. The white coat did not create her value. Those things only revealed what had been true all along. So when we look at this story, we are not only watching a woman save a child, we are watching a woman take back her name, her truth, and her place in the room. Her mother called her the babysitter, but by the end, everyone knew the truth. She was the doctor. She was the calm in the crisis. She was the person they ignored until they needed her most. And that is the kind of quiet revenge that does not need noise, because the truth is already loud enough.